Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven speaking to you from Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the 11th day of the month of Tammuz, 5781. It's the 21st of June, 2021. This coming Shabbat, we read Parshat Balak, which begins in the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verse 2, and concludes chapter 25, verse 9. Today is the 22nd, I said 21st of June. I believe it's the longest day, either today or tomorrow is the longest day of the year, meaning the most sunlit hours in the day for the year, meaning that beginning either this week or next week, our Shabbatot will start coming in a little bit earlier each Friday evening, and of course concluding a little bit earlier as the earth revolves around the sun and time moves forward and history marches forward. This coming Sunday is the 17th of Tammuz. That is a fast day, Yom Tzom, Shva Esri B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. It is a dawn to dusk from the morning. It doesn't begin in the evening, but in the morning before the sun rises is the last time that we could possibly eat or drink. But once the sun rises, once the sky begins to lighten, I should say, the fast is on, and it only concludes when it is dark in the evening and a few stars have appeared, and it is, despite the fact that it is not a full 24 or 25 hour fast, it is a pretty long fast, and because it comes in the longest, one of the longest days of the year, as opposed to, let's say, the 10th of Tevet, which usually falls in the Gregorian month of December. So the days, of course, are very short. So even though that also is a dawn to dark fast, it's much shorter, and of course, it's much cooler. So this coming Sunday is 17th of Tammuz, and the 17th of Tammuz, of course, was the day that Moshe Rabbeinu, 40 days after going up to Mount Sinai, right? 40 days after Shavuot, the holiday that celebrates the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and after Moshe spent 40 days up in the top of Mount Sinai, enveloped in a cloud of glory, where he didn't eat or drink for 40 days, but received the Torah from Hashem. And at the conclusion of those 40 days, of course, he came down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the law in his arms. And he was met by Joshua. And God said to Moshe, you better hurry because the people are screwing up. And of course, the screw up was the golden calf. Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, they miscalculated, and they thought that 40 days, they knew he was going to be gone. They knew Moshe was going to be gone for 40 days. They thought the 40 days had already passed. And so they panicked, and they said, what are we going to do? And of course, the result was the golden calf. And that is a day that will live in infamy. And so that is the first calamity that occurred on the 17th of Tammuz. But later on in our history, it was the 17th of Tammuz. That was a day on which the Tamid, the daily offering in the first Beit HaMikdash, in the first Holy Temple built by Solomon, was canceled because of the Babylonians. Their siege of the city made it impossible to bring any offerings, to bring any animals for offerings. So on the 17th of Tammuz, there was no animal to offer. And the daily offering, the Tamid offering in Hebrew, which had occurred since the days of the tabernacle, ceased on that day. And of course, it was 3 weeks later, on the 9th of Av, that the Babylonians destroyed the first Holy Temple. And then, all those many years later, some 500 or so years later, it was the 17th of Tammuz that the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem, and 3 weeks later destroyed the second Holy Temple, the temple that was built by Ezra and Nehemiah, and I believe it was something like 42,600 exilees that had been exiled by the Babylonians returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the Holy Temple. That was the second Holy Temple, which of course was then re-purified, re-sanctified, and rededicated by the Maccabees in the time of the Maccabee revolt against the Greek invaders. And then many, many years later, it was received its final upgrade. I can't think of the proper word for an architectural structure, but of course Herod the Great did a complete makeover of the Holy Temple and made it the most beautiful building in antiquity. And they say that if you had never seen the Holy Temple, you never saw what real beauty was. And that, of course, was destroyed by the Romans, by Titus and his legions on the 9th of Av. So, 17th of Tammuz, tough day for the Jewish people, tough day for the nation of Israel. Throughout the centuries, the millennia, many other calamities and disasters also occurred on that day. Too many to mention in this broadcast. So, and again, as well as on the 9th of Av, so many horrible things befell the Jewish people on the 9th of Av. So what do we make of that? Is this like a day of cosmic bad karma, nothing you can do about it? It's just, stay at home, don't go out? Well, not quite, because the prophet Zechariah, of course, as we all know, received the word from Hashem, and he records these words in chapter 8 of the book of Zechariah, verse 18. The word of Hashem, Master of Legions, came to me, saying, "Thus said Hashem, Master of Legions, the fast of the 4th month, that's the fast of the 17th of Tammuz. The fast of the 5th, that's the fast of the 9th of Av. The fast of the 7th, that's the fast of Gedalia, Tzom Gedalia. And the fast of the 10th, of course, is the 10th of Tevet, will be to the house of Judah for joy and for gladness and for happy festivals. Only love, truth, and peace." And of course, he goes on to prophesy that at the end of days, the Holy Temple will be rebuilt and the nations will flock to the Holy Temple. And of course, in verse 23, that famous line, "Then thus said Hashem, Master of Legions, in those days it will happen that 10 men of all different languages of the nations will take hold. They will take hold of the corner of the garment of a Jewish man, saying, 'Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you.'" And of course, we hopefully, and I truly believe, are approaching those days, and we're certainly approaching the days where these 4 fast days, the fast day of the 4th month and the 5th month and the 7th month and the 10th month, will be turned into days of joy and celebration, because we will no longer be mourning the destruction of the Holy Temple. We will be celebrating its rebuilding and celebrating the renewal of the divine service. B'mehera v'yameinu, may it be soon in our days. So the answer to my question is no. The 17th of Av, as well as these other days, aren't days that have some kind of cosmic bad karma attached to them. There's nothing you can do about it. No, there's a lot we can do about it. We can do everything about it, and what we need to do about it is to rebuild the Holy Temple, renew the service in the Holy Temple, and gather up the nations to worship together, all together now, as brothers and sisters, children of Hashem, in Hashem's house, the Holy Temple. So, of course, we at the Temple Institute, that's what our mission is, to try to do everything we can to make these things happen. And if anybody who fasts on these days, as many of us do, when you're fasting on that day and there's nothing you would rather have than that day to be turned into a festive day, then you really feel it in your physical body as well as in your soul and in your heart. I have associates, friends who say, we're here, we've returned, the prophecies have already happening, we're back in the land, we have independence, we're a Jewish state, we can worship freely here. Jerusalem is being rebuilt. Why do we need to fast anymore in these days? I wish that I could agree with that sentiment, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And if you want proof, go up to the Temple Mount. The temple lies in ruins. The Temple Mount is a disgrace because it's been turned into parts amusement park by the Muslim Waqf, who Israel has given administrative control over the Temple Mount to, and to part garbage dump because it's fairly filthy and it's just poorly kept, and it's mostly in ruins because there is an administration of hatred and division on the Temple Mount, and that of course is the working of the Waqf, and that's what we need to overcome, and that's what every Jew and every non-Muslim, and again, hopefully the doors to Israel will open, the skies will open soon, that's the plan, and people will start coming from overseas, from abroad, to visit again in Israel and in Jerusalem, and lines again will stretch as far as the eye can see for people to go up onto the Temple Mount, and to go up and to pray, and to do it with a full heart, and to do it with a feeling of solidarity with all peoples of faith, because that's the foundation of the Holy Temple. That's how we're going to build a Holy Temple. Yes, a real Holy Temple, not imaginary Holy Temple, but a real Holy Temple made of marble and of stone and of gold, etc., etc. But the foundation begins with prayer and with solidarity and with unity and with respect and love. It's just what he said. What did Zechariah say? He said, what were those beautiful words? He said, joy and gladness, truth and peace. Love, truth, and peace. Yeah, love, truth, and peace. It may sound like a slogan and it may sound empty. Anybody can say it, but go up on the Temple Mount and say it and feel it and pray it. And it makes a difference. Parshat Balak. Balak, of course, is the king of the Moabites, who, upon seeing the nation of Israel draw near to his territory, east of the Jordan River, grows terrified because he's heard they've just conquered. They've just conquered Sihon. They're strong. They're motivated. He's heard what Hashem has done, how they brought this people out of Egypt and has brought them all across the desert, all across the wilderness. And now, in the 40th year of Israel's sojourn in the desert, in the wilderness, Israel's getting ready to move into the land. Moshe, again, upon hearing from Hashem that he won't be entering the land after he struck twice the rock, instead of speaking to it, and he called the people of Israel rebels. Oh, you rebels. You want water? Here's water. And he struck the rock. And this did not find favor in Hashem's eyes. And Hashem said, because you didn't sanctify me in front of Israel, you won't go in, and neither will Aaron. So he's not going in, but immediately after this occurred, and we only hear later in the book of Deuteronomy when Moshe is telling his story and his version of things, his bitter disappointment not being able to enter into the land, and how he prays Hashem and drives Hashem crazy, really, until Hashem finally tells him in Deuteronomy, stop, no more. You're not going in. But despite this, immediately after the incident with the rock at Merivah, the waters of consternation, Moshe immediately marches the people up to the border of Edom, and Edom won't let them go through the land. And of course, Israel won't fight Edom because Edom are the descendants of Esau, and Esau is the brother of Yaakov, Israel. So they march around, but then they take on Sihon and conquer Sihon. And now they're here by Balak, and he's terrified, and he sends messengers to call on, of course, our favorite heathen prophet, Bilaam. Bilaam, who our sages say was a prophet of a higher level even than Moshe. How does that figure? Moshe Rabbeinu, who brought us the law, who brought us out of Egypt. But Bilaam was on a level with Moshe, but unlike Moshe, who was the most modest man on the face of the earth, and unlike Moshe, who was God's faithful servant, and who God spoke face to face, mouth to mouth, Bilaam, despite his high level of prophecy, was neither a modest man, nor was he a faithful man to Hashem, nor did Hashem speak to him mouth to mouth or face to face. Hashem spoke to him in dreams, like he spoke to other prophets. He spoke to him in dreams. We see that at the beginning of the story, when Balak sends his messengers and Bilaam needs to consult with Hashem whether he should go or not, because Balak would like Bilaam to come and curse Israel. Maybe you can curse these people, because I need some help here. So let me just go to Bilaam in and the incident of Bilaam and the aftermath is really, this is the last of the calamities that will befall Israel in the wilderness. Following this story of Balak / Bilaam and Pinchas, which is the next parsha, the next Torah reading, we then really talk about the final conquering of the lands outside of Israel, etc., etc., the preparation for entering. But this is the final major incident that occurs before Israel enters the land. So Parshat Balak, it begins Numbers 22:2. I'm going to read the first verse or 2 or 3 in Hebrew and then in English. Vayar Balak ben Sipor et kol asher asa Yisrael le'emori. Vayagal Moav mipnei ha'am ma'od ki rav hu. Vayakatz Moav mipnei bnei Yisrael. Vayomer Moav el ziknei Midian ata yelachachu. הקהל את כל סביבותינו כי לכוך השור את ירק השדה ובלק בן ציפור מלך למואב בעת ההיא. Balak son of Tzipor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorite. Moab became very frightened. He was the king of Moab. Moab became very frightened of the people because it was numerous, and Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, "Now the congregation will lick up our entire surroundings as an ox licks up the greenery of the field." Balak, son of Tzipor, was king of Moab at that time. So he has this mashal, he has this little concept of Israel being like an ox that with its tongue, when it feeds in the pasture, its tongue just rips up all the greenery and leaves nothing but devastation. And that's how he pictures Israel is going to destroy him. And he would like what he believes will be some kind of heavenly help. So he sends messengers to Bilaam, and of course Bilaam drives a hard bargain, and Hashem says, don't go. And then Hashem says, go. And then, as he's on his way, we have that fascinating story of Bilaam's ass, of this donkey, a she-donkey, who, unlike Bilaam, sees an angel of Hashem in the way, an angel with a drawn sword. And every time she sees it, she either turns aside or crouches down, and this angers Bilaam because he doesn't see the angel. Now, how ironic is this, that this prophet, this high prophet of Hashem, heathen prophet, who is so famous. He's from the same nation, by the way, Midian, as Jethro. Whereas Jethro was a friend to Israel, and Jethro was a humble man and a good man. He was a priest. He was a priest of Midian, if we recall, and he gave up. He abandoned his idolatrous ways when he saw what Hashem did for Israel when Israel left Egypt, and Hashem destroyed the Egyptian army and brought Israel across the sea. He became a believer, and he dropped all his idolatrous ways and attached himself to the Shem, to the God of Israel. Bilaam, on the other hand, was a free spirit, I guess. He was a prophet for hire. He would use his powers of prophecy for whatever purpose you would pay for, or as he understood what Hashem would let him get away with. He's willing to test the waters. He's willing to test Hashem's will. Maybe Hashem will let him curse this people. He'll see. He knows he cannot defy what Hashem tells him to say. But despite his high and mighty attitude, and despite his prowess, and he really was, again, as our sages attest, he really had it. He had the gift of prophecy. Despite all that, as he's riding on his donkey, he can't even see an angel of Hashem that the donkey clearly sees. And so after striking the donkey 3 times, the donkey finally sees this angel again, and he can't. There's no place for the donkey to move, not to the left or the right, and the donkey crouches down, and this just... Bilaam's had enough, and he's about set to kill his donkey. And then the donkey opens its mouth. And we read in verse 28 of chapter 22, and Hashem opened the mouth of the she-donkey, and it said to Bilaam, "What have I done to you that you struck me these 3 times?" And Bilaam speaks back to his donkey, very matter-of-factly, and says, "Because you mocked me. If only there were a sword in my hand, I would now have killed you." Of course, how ironic is that? If only there was a sword in his hand. There's a sword in the hand of this angel that he can't even see. And the she-donkey said back to Bilaam, "Am I not your she-donkey that you have ridden all your life until this day? Have I been accustomed to do such a thing to you?" And he said, "No." And then Hashem uncovered Bilaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of Hashem standing on the road with his sword drawn in his hand. He bowed his head and prostrated himself on his face. And then the angel of Hashem gives Bilaam a tongue lashing, and then lets him go. Bilaam continues on his way, and of course, we know that he meets with Balak, and he tells Balak, "I'm happy to help you out here, but you have to know that each time when you call upon me to curse Israel, I need to call upon Hashem, and I can only speak the words that Hashem puts in my mouth." And of course, every time he does open his mouth, a blessing comes out. Beautiful words come out about Israel. So, just to backtrack a bit, what was that whole incident about the donkey? It's kind of mysterious. And to make it even more mysterious, we're told, our sages tell us, and it's recorded in the Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, that among other things that were created on the 6th day of creation, just before Shabbat, other things which include the mouth of the earth, which opened up and swallowed Korach, and included in this small list, I'm not going to go over everything now, was the mouth of the donkey that spoke, that God prepared this in advance for this very moment. Of course, God knows everything before it happens. And of course, God didn't suddenly at the last minute create some kind of miracle that allowed this donkey to talk. It was pre-programmed for this moment. Nevertheless, what's it all about? If we hadn't heard about this incident, if we just knew that Bilaam got in his donkey and rode over to Moab and met with Balak, would we have been any of the worse off for not having that knowledge? I don't know. But it does tell us, first of all, it reveals the amazing world of our forefathers, that these amazing things occurred. And this is recorded here, but obviously it wasn't so unusual that Bilaam was flabbergasted. He just kind of went along with it. So it reveals tremendous insight into the reality that our ancestors lived in, that we don't think about it. We learn a lot about ancient times from archaeology, from ancient writings, from history, but we often assume that the reality they lived in, despite being much more ancient, and some people would say much more primitive, was basically the same. But I say it wasn't. There are fascinating things in the air, in the water, in the reality at that time that either we are like Bilaam, just simply unaware of today, or else they're not occurring today. Perhaps if we became more sensitive to God's presence in the world, we would pick up on some of these fascinating things that surround us and that occur that we just are oblivious to. If we're walking down the street, swiping our smartphones and messaging to people, you don't see what's going on around you. You don't see that there's an angel with a drawn sword in your path that may be giving you a message that you really ought to take a moment and heed. Anyway, we all know that Bilaam makes some of the most beautiful blessings for Israel. And of course, the pièce de résistance, the crescendo, the high points are these words. I'm going to just begin from chapter 24, verse 1. Bilaam saw that it was good in Hashem's eyes to bless Israel, so he did not go as every other time towards divinations, but he set his face toward the wilderness. Bilaam raised his eyes and saw Israel dwelling according to its tribes, and the Spirit of God was upon him. He declaimed his parable and said, the words of Bilaam, son of Beor, the son of the man with the open eye, the words of the one who hears the sayings of God, who sees the vision of Shaddai while fallen and with uncovered eyes. How goodly are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwelling places, O Israel, stretching out like brooks, like gardens by a river, like aloes planted by Hashem, like cedars by water. Water shall flow from his wells, and his seed shall be by abundant waters. His king shall be exalted over Agag, and his kingdom shall be appraised. It is God who brought him out of Egypt according to the power of his loftiness. He will consume the nations that oppress him and crush their bones, and his arrow shall pierce them. He crouched and lay down like a lion, and like a lion cub. Who can stand up to him? Those who bless him, those who bless you are blessed, and those who curse you are accursed. Mic drop, right? Of course, Bilaam is furious. I hired you to curse them, and you're blessing them. This is not what I had in mind. And Bilaam says, I can only say what Hashem puts in my mouth. Now, our sages teach us that when he looked out and he saw the encampments of Israel in the down below, and he couldn't even see to the ends of the encampment because there were so many. But he saw that each tent was staggered, so that one family in one tent couldn't look into the tent of the next family. So there'd be modesty. And he saw that modesty was the way, was the ethos of the nation of Israel. And that's what he was blessing here. How goodly are your tents. A nation that's modest, a nation that respects one another, a nation that respects the family. This is the key, everybody. This is the key to deflecting the curses and just getting the blessings. You know how many Bilaams are out there today? Thousands of them. They're all over. They're all over the UN. They're all over. They're in Congress. They're all over all the capitals of the world. They're even here in Israel, and they're all over Twitter, and they're all over Facebook, and they're all over all the social media and all the news media and the network media. They're all over. There's 1,000 Bilaams out there today, each one taking his turn. Each one's going to curse Israel. But whatever they say, it becomes a blessing because they don't get it. They don't get it. Bilaam got it. You bless Israel, you'll be blessed. You curse Israel, you'll be cursed. A nation that dwells alone is not counted among the nations. Those are Bilaam's words. Modesty, family, respect, these are the keystones, the cornerstones of any healthy society. And God help a society that tries to undermine any of those cornerstones. And it's happening today. It's happening in Western society. I mean, there are political movements based on destroying the family structure, destroying the nuclear family, saying it's unhealthy, saying it's racist, saying it's cruel. I don't know what. They got it all wrong. They got it completely wrong. They're self-destructing. The family unit leads to the community unit. And if people in a family is imbued with love, that's nature. That's how it works. That's what makes a family. And if that families form communities, and communities care for one another, then societies are formed, and villages and towns and societies are formed, and people care for one another. And then nations can be healthy and can be safe. That's what protected Israel. And to this very day, the most important weapon Israel has, and everybody's impressed with Israel's military prowess, and they've got this and they've got that. And yes, it's very impressive, but Israel's most impressive weapon, even more impressive than the Iron Dome, is that we still have it. We still have the family. We still have communities that care for one another. We still have people that come together in times of trouble. We are one family. We are one tribe. We're one nation. And it shines through in times of trouble. And that's what God picks up on. That's what protects us. God blesses us because we maintain our love for one another. We maintain our modesty. We maintain our care. Is it always there? Is it always perfect? Is it always what it should be? No, and that's why we always have to work constantly here in Israel to maintain and to improve and to be a healthier society. And that's why division and internal strife is the worst thing. It's the greatest weapon of our enemies. And this, again, is precisely what happened after Bilaam blessed Israel and went on his way. We see what happens, that Israel began to go after the women of Moab, and the men started to consort with the women of Moab, and they started to bow down to the gods of Moab. And that was Israel's downfall. That was only stayed by Pinchas. And we're going to be learning all about that next week. Once again, fast is coming Sunday, Tzom Kal, an easy fast for all who fast. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk.